And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin of Lakers Daily, joined today by somebody who I said before we went on the air, I cannot believe it has taken this long to get him on a pod of mine. He covers the Clippers in a way, like, frankly, you cover the Clippers the way that I cover the Lakers, and I really respect it. Like, you really hold their feet to the fire, and I think you do a great job with that. You also have my favorite in NBA Twitter. Rich, you can find him on Twitter at Rich Homie Flom. Robert, thank you very much for hopping on, man. You can find his work at 213 Hoops. He's also a part of the Lob the Jam podcast, which is affiliated with that website as well. Thank you very much for hopping on, man. How you holding up?
You know what, Anthony? Well, thanks for having me, first of all. In terms of holding up, I said this on our pod. I was just kind of relieved that this season was over. It was not the most joyous of last few months. The Clippers had their run, but it was the last couple of weeks were not great, and losing to the Mavs is just it's just not what you want.
It's funny. The Mavs are a team that the Clippers, I feel like, are built to withstand if everybody is healthy.
Yeah.
The problem is they're never healthy, right? That's just like, because if you're designing a team to defend Luka, it's with Kawhi Leonard, it's with Paul George, it's with somebody who can do stuff like just kind of make him think about stuff at the rim. Zoo is good enough at that. And then it's a team that is long enough to rotate out when Luka kicks the ball out of certain traps and stuff like that. That's I think they've lost some of that by bringing in Russ, by bringing in Harden, by relying as much as they do with Norm. But for the most part, the core there, when healthy, is a group that should be able to beat the Mavericks, but they're just not healthy. And I actually think that's like a perfect kind of jumping off point here in this conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously, the reason Lakers fans are even more hyper focused on the Clippers than A, they like to admit, and B, than they normally would be. By the way, that is the dumbest thing. This whole like rent-free thing between the two organizations or the two fan bases. I don't like the Clippers. It's okay for us. I'm sure Clippers fans don't like the Lakers. And I don't know why that's like not okay to admit.
It's
weird.
One, it's fine to admit, and two, like I just feel like you guys should have better rivals than us. Like, it's
the problem is it's only the Celtics and we see them twice a year. So
that is true.
The
NBA scheduling is so weird. That's a completely different topic. But it's totally fine. Like I don't know. It's like I'm not like really a Dodgers fan, but like when I was a kid and I liked the Dodgers a lot more. Like I didn't like the Angels. Like same thing.
Yeah.
So
especially because like it's I know this is condescending or whatever, but it's little brother. It's and like the thing that little brother can possibly do that pisses off older brother more than anything is get as good or threaten, or become competent enough to challenge older brother. Like I grew up playing basketball. I have a younger brother who is 7 years younger than me, and I have another younger brother who's 13 years younger than me. So while I was like still trying to be athletic, the 13, that one, like that one never really mattered. But eventually the middle brother, Andrew, he actually did get good enough and athletic enough. He grew up to be a few inches taller than me. He wound up jumping a little higher than me and stuff like that. And it pissed me off. It made me so angry that this guy had like those physical tools that I wish I could have. And that's honestly how I feel about the Clippers now. It pisses me off that your ownership seems like willing to pay money. And it pisses me off that they run their organization in a way that I wish the Lakers ran theirs, where they have no problem spending on front office personnel and scouting and coaching and all of these other things that, hell, they're going to own their own building. That is something that the Lakers still have not done. And that's the part of it that, like, when I am my most kind of snarky as it pertains to the Clippers, it's because I'm sitting here saying like, there's some stuff going on over there that I wish that now I do think that there are some shortcomings there too.
Many.
And we can talk about those, but like overall, when I am my most sarcastic and I lash out at the Clippers, it's because I look over at the Ramby in the Lakers front office and I'm like, yeah, I wish this wasn't a thing that I had to worry about all the time.
The Clippers are just kind of like a more professional organization.
Yeah.
Is,
Yeah.
I know Harrison, our mutual friend, jokes about the Lakers like small business, like family
It's a
business
mom and
thing.
pop shop. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of is. Like the Ramby are probably the most like current part of that. Rob Pelinka to an extent as well. But like, yeah, I think that's kind of the difference. But I mean, the Clippers, nobody hates the Clippers more than their own fans is the real thing. Uh, like nobody hates the Clippers players more than the Clippers fans. It is, yeah, things have changed a lot, and some being probably not the most miserable in the NBA. There's some really tortured fan bases out there,
Yeah.
but like,
Like
the
Mets fans, I
Wolves,
think they're kind of like the Mets and Jets fans, right?
yeah,
Like
it's a great comp just for like the smaller, team in the market, everything like that. But like some of these other teams, like the Wolves fans have a great argument to be like the most miserable, and like look at them now, and it's like
yeah.
way brighter future, which is crazy after the Rudy Gobert trade, and it's just like that's one draft pick, can
Yeah.
change everything, and the Clippers are won't have many draft picks for the next decade, so yeah.
Well, that one draft pick would have been Shea, and you know that
Yeah.
he plays for a different team.
He did
Um,
change the franchise, maybe just not in a good way, but yeah.
he changed that franchise. You were hoping he would change, you would
Yeah.
change yours. But no, the reason that I wanted to talk to you today is because something about this Tyronn Lue situation seems weird to me. Like smells fishy, you know. Um, Normally in this spot, when you have a team that has underwhelmed for as long as the Clippers have underwhelmed, in terms of postseason success and the general like vibe, between the fans and that team, it's just like they need a change. It very very clearly needs a change, and for some reason, the Clippers think that the thing that they need to change most right now appears to be Paul George, because they extended Kawhi Leonard and they apparently want to bring back Tyronn Lue. And the person that they are they are reportedly offering below the max to is Paul George. And between the two wings, the person I would be more comfortable paying would probably be PG just because of health. But he doesn't have the greatest track record either. So, but like this whole Lou thing seems super weird to me. Until you get to like corporate America and the way that corporate America works. And
Shittily.
but like, because again, the easiest thing in the sport, in professional sports to change is the head coach, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Their old money doesn't count against the cap. It's the easiest thing that you could sell your fans on if you're in the copium market. And yet for some reason here with Ty Lue, it doesn't appear to be heading in that direction. And like, for me, selfishly, I'm saying this feels very it feels very tech bro-y, right? Where it's like, well, if we let Lue go and he goes and makes them better, that is a net negative, even if the coach that we bring in is better than Lue or resonates better or, gets better yields than Lue has to this point. If we make our competition better while we can pay to keep that coach in our building, that is the more ideal scenario here. And then also, like, I also don't blame them at all for basically saying, I don't think it would ever get here with the Lakers, but I understand them at least initially saying, like, we aren't letting this guy go. The Lakers are going to have to trade for him if they want Ty Lue. And so at least right now, it just feels kind of bluffy to me. Is it like, am I reading the situation poorly or what's going on there?
It is very confusing because like all NBA teams, the Clippers lie constantly. That's all
Yeah.
they do basically. Um, I think you hit on something which is very insightful and is slightly tangential, but is very accurate to the Clippers and how they've behaved, even in the past few years when they've been way more competent than they were for most of the franchise history, which is they're very afraid. They are afraid of backlash.
Mm.
They are cowardly is too strong, but like them holding on to Ty Lue specifically to keep him from the Lakers is like a very Clippers thing to do, even if they could maybe get a better guy. Like this is and people who follow me on Twitter know that Marcus Morris lives rent free in my brain,
Yeah.
to a legitimately unhealthy extent. The Clippers traded for him in large part because the Lakers also wanted to trade for him. If you want to think back to 2020, which feels like a lifetime ago, in
Oh
that
my
like
God, you're right.
arms race, the
Mhm.
Lakers were constantly being linked to Marcus Morris. So were the Clippers. The Clippers ended up trading for him. And a big reason why that was cited by everybody at the time was so the Lakers would not get him. Look how that ended up working out for both franchises. I think there is something to, if the Lakers had a coach and were not interested in Ty Lue, the reporting might be a little bit different.
Mhm.
I do think there's at least a little bit of that involved here, where it's like specifically because the Lakers have such an interest, I think the Clippers are probably that much more interested in trying to keep him. That said, it is a very complicated situation because it's all intertwined. The Paul George thing, the James Harden thing, etc. If Paul George and James Harden leave, do they really want to bring back Ty Lue on a huge deal? Does Ty Lue want to come back? To me, that's the biggest question.
Yeah,
Is
that
not
was my next question. What's stopping him from just resigning? He only has 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah. Resigning is tricky. Coaches Do coaches resign? I guess they do. Um, there are plenty of Clippers fans who think Ty Lue is a clutch agent, like a double agent, and has been trying to
That's a great
sabotage his
theory.
way to the Lakers for like years. Um,
He did just start PJ Tucker in
yeah, God,
that.
I
It
don't
did
want to think about
happen.
it. I don't want to think about it. What Ty Lue wants is really interesting because he has not kept secret that like the injuries and all the stuff going on and the fact that the Clippers are never healthy really annoys him and like frustrates him, which makes sense for an NBA head coach and somebody who's very competitive, which Ty Lue is.
Yeah.
Um, to me, the question is why like he'd want to come back. Maybe the answer is money. Maybe it's just the Clippers are literally just paying him a lot more. My guess is if they do extend him, he's going to be at the Steve Kerr whatever pop
Yeah.
level of Spoelstra level of like one of the 3 or 4 most paid coaches. As we just discussed, maybe the Lakers are not close to that. It's very possible. It could just come down to money. I,
My guess, if I had to guess, I think Jeannie fainted when she realized, oh my God, now we have to pay Darvin and a championship caliber head coach. Oh dear God.
yeah, it's really confusing. It's hard to suss out because so last year, 2023, the Clippers were just absolutely miserable. Ty Lue was going through like a lot of personal things in his life. He said after the season, like several people in his family passed away, and like
Mhm.
it was just this very, very difficult season. Like there were many more rumors last year about him being let go or leaving than there were this year, which was a step in the right direction. In the short term, you can argue long term, hard in free agency, whatever. But this was like a happier year. But like it's still like it ended in the first round. The Clippers are paying a bajillion dollars for a team that is really old and really injury prone.
Mhm.
And like this Ty Lue has been really frustrated at times. So like to me, is it really just a money thing? Like Ty Lue mentioned in his exit interview, the Clippers don't actually do exit interviews, which is really funny. But that he's built relationships across the organization, with Steve Ballmer and Lawrence Frank and Trent Redden and all these other guys, and that's a big reason why he's staying. Maybe that's accurate.
Mhm.
To me, I agree with you. There is something like a little off about it. I think the Clippers are making a very public show of it. I think Ty Lue is making a public show of it. But like if things go south with their free agency, if like the Clippers are like kind of forced into a pivot or like a light rebuild or whatever the case may be, like, are they really going to sign Ty Lue to a super lucrative extension? I don't know.
So essentially, Lou is hoping that the Lakers don't hire a coach right away. That they take their
Probably.
time here and because right, like if they hire a coach and the Clippers free agency doesn't go to plan, he might be, the type of extension that you would sign probably wouldn't be as great, or B, he would just be, kind of the opportunity wouldn't be as good, anywhere near as good.
Yeah.
That Clippers free agency thing, there was a good write-up that the Athletic did, that outlined the offseason ahead for the Clippers. And man, that thing was fascinating because there is so much going on. You have, again, you have the Paul George situation here. I don't think he's a max player anymore. Like
He's
this
100%
is like,
not a max player.
yeah, like this is the thing that, like hell, I don't think any of those Clippers max guys are max players anymore, right? You could, Kawhi isn't because of the injury concern. Paul George neither. Harden, you just never, like, I can never trust that guy. Like, maybe in terms of production, you can maybe get there if you look at him in the right light, but like, there's just, he just always feels like he's, like 1 month away from setting another organization on fire. So like, I just, and look, like, frankly, if we're being honest here, the Lakers are dealing with a lot of the same stuff, right? Like, the problem with the max system is that unless you have an actual max player, like, you're at a real disadvantage, right? Because those players are going to be way more valuable than their contract is, just
Right.
inherently. And then everybody else, if you have, like, for a long time, basically, your best or second best player always got max money because teams didn't care about it as much. But with this new CBA, with the second apron, with all of this as it currently exists, now you're seeing a lot of these teams actually negotiate against their best and second best player for the first time in my life, frankly.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's where we find ourselves here with Paul George. So like that, that in and of itself, Paul George's decision and his market and all of that, I feel like is really going to dictate the rest of their offseason. If they lose Paul George, would they trade Kawhi and just try to rebuild, or what?
So there's so many, it's very complicated, right? Like, one, I could not agree more. Like, if there was no second apron, I'm pretty sure the Clippers would just max Paul George.
Yeah.
But the way the second apron works is it's not just about like, oh, owners are being cheap. It completely hampers your ability to build a team, right? I'm sure you've
Especially
talked about
next
this on the
year.
pod.
Like,
Yeah.
next year, all of the handcuffs come into play. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like impossible. I'm sure you've talked about it as related to the Lakers. It's the same thing for the Clippers. Like, Steve Ballmer cannot buy his way out of it. Like, it's not a money thing. It's just like an inherent team building restrictions. I think it's stupid. I think the whole thing is ludicrous. It is funny that it punishes the Warriors, but like, I think just punishing teams that want to spend is bad. It's a bad thing. Like, you should want your owners to spend a lot of money to produce a good product. So issues with that aside, yeah, I mean, I think if there was no second apron, they would just max Paul George. But there is, and Paul George, he's not even close to a max player. For people who did not watch the Clippers Mavs series closely, and I don't blame you, it was really not a very entertaining series to watch. Also, Luka's the biggest whiner in the NBA. Just maddening,
especially post kid. Like, he has such annoyed dad energy, and I recognize it. I'm very much an annoyed dad, but like every call, man, even when he would get the call, he would like yell at the referee for not making it right when it happened.
And it's like, I like, my Clippers like blogging and podcasting era began with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. Like, I recognize the true, and he is way worse than those guys ever were. It's crazy. But anyway, Paul George was like average in a series Kawhi effectively did not get to 20 points per game, which is, it's crazy.
That's nuts. That's
he averaged under 16 shots a game.
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing, is that like, now with some of the teams, I saw you tweet this out, and I think it's a really good point, because you have a lot of these teams that are looking at him as like the missing piece, right? The next thing that helps them take their leap forward. And I don't know if I would rely on Paul George to help me take a playoff leap, because it's been the same thing his entire career. Like, I think there's some kind of narrative to it or whatever, but like, production wise, and in those moments, you can just kind of see him just kind of like just kind of clam up just enough. That's why it's so important for the Clippers to have Kawhi available,
Right.
because he's the opposite of that. He's the guy who, like, all right, Paul, you just go stand over there. I'll handle these last few minutes. We're good
Yes.
here.
Yes.
And I don't know, like, if you're Orlando, I know Philly is potentially interested as well. And if you're like gonna carve out all of the cap space that it takes to get this guy, and you're seeing him as like that piece that helps you take that next step, I just don't think he's there anymore.
Philly is so interesting because they're really the perfect team. He's like the clear third option. They have a guy who can cover. He's still fine on defense, but he's not like an elite guy on defense. Like a guy who can cover up on defense. Maxey will do all the ball handling. Embiid can handle stuff in the post. So whether he goes or not is really, it's again, like you said, like kind of a bluffing thing. This is all just a big bluff game, the Paul George
Yeah.
situation. Much more blatantly than the Ty Lue situation. I think the Paul George situation is pretty clear, which is the Clippers are not offering him a max. He thinks he can get a max elsewhere. When free agency starts, he will present whatever biggest offer that is bigger than the Clippers offer to the Clippers and be like, match this or I'm leaving. And then the Clippers will either match it, which would probably be a bad idea, or they will call his bluff and be like, we don't think you want to live in Orlando or Philadelphia. And I don't think he wants to live in those places.
Yeah.
And be like, you will take this still preposterous amount of money to live here in Los Angeles and still be the third best player. And Orlando's not going to be a championship team anyway, unless Franz or Paolo. If that's his argument there, it would just be for the money. Philly, maybe you can see Maxey's way younger, way more dynamic than anybody on the Clippers. Embiid is just a better player, his own injury and kind of clutch issues aside. So yeah, that's the PG situation. But yeah, if PG walks, then do you bring back Harden? I don't know. There's really been very little reporting. You mentioned the Athletic piece that Sam Amick and Law Murray put out. And the Clippers have said they want to bring back everybody. Well, everybody important, not like Mason Plumlee, but everybody,
Including Russ, then, which is weird because I wouldn't consider him all that important. But okay,
it's a different, yeah. But if they lose Paul George, like you said, all of a sudden you do have options now. Now becomes a real if we let James Harden walk, all of a sudden we will have actual cap space by next year, not in 5 years. I mean, you still won't have any draft picks outside of some really late swaps because OKC is going to be really good and probably better than the Clippers for the next 5 years. But you would be able to start rebuilding and reshaping your franchise if you bring back James Harden and Paul George for 3 years. Like you said, nobody's trading for those guys, at least not on positive value. I think some Clippers fans and media people think that they could get pieces for Kawhi Leonard. I don't know what team is trading for Kawhi Leonard, given his injury situation. There are teams that he makes sense on, but what kind of return does he provide? I have zero idea. And so bringing it back to Ty Lue, I think to some extent it is going to be a waiting game. I would therefore not be surprised if the Lakers do not sign a coach soon. They might really be waiting on him, and he might be waiting on the Clippers in free agency. The way people are talking about it, it's it's on the verge of getting done. Again, I don't know if I really believe that. I don't know why he would do that unless they are just opening up the bank for him. And maybe they do because as you said, the coaching money does not count towards the cap. You can pay a coach as much as you want. And that's where Steve Ballmer can be you're going to be the best paid coach in the entire NBA, Ty Lue. Here's $20 million a year for 5 years or whatever. And pay him a preposterous amount of money. And maybe that's just it. But it's very hard to suss out. I agree. The chances of him leaving are probably higher than has been rumored. And I also agree with you that even though, every time you say this, and I'm sure this happens soon, it drives you absolutely insane. People immediately say, when you say you don't want the coach, it's who's better? Find me another coach. And it's well, that's not my job. One, that's not my job. I'm not the one with relationships and who's supposed to know about all the up and coming assistant head coaches and innovative college coaches. I'm not supposed to know that because this is not my full-time job. One. And two, sometimes change can just be good. Sometimes a team is just out of ideas is completely stale. And like, if you do want to bring the team back and bring Ty Lue back, it's like, what do you expect to change from what's been happening the past 4 years? And
Right.
the answer to me is pretty clearly nothing.
Yeah.
So, which is not good enough. So
Right. Like
yeah,
you have a nice, it looks like a fireplace or like some kind of a stone wall
yeah,
behind you.
yeah.
Personally, like just continuing to ram my head up against that brick wall just doesn't sound all that appealing to
No.
me, because I don't think, like, I think I saw, was it, I think it was Law, right, who wrote that they made that trade, they sent Shea to OKC, and the thought was that, and I think even Sam Presti said at the time that they might go out and win a championship. The point for them is for the Clippers to win a championship soon, and then we can build kind of further
Right.
into the future. And lo and behold, the OKC Thunder have won a series before the Clippers have, or something like that. I'd have to find the exact phrasing that he had there.
Uh,
Um,
he said this in 2022, so it was more recently.
okay,
Because the Clippers did go to the Western Conference Finals in
yeah,
2021. But yeah, he said this in 2022 when they were asked about it, because I think that was like their worst year. They like really bottomed out. Like that was year they like sat Shea with
yeah,
unexplained injuries for like the last 40 games or whatever it was. And so that quote was from 2022. And so since then, yes, the Clippers have not won a
yeah.
series,
There you
and
go.
the Thunder just did. So yeah,
And that's tough, that's
yeah,
and I'm looking at, because again, for me, I think the Lakers have a lot of this to deal with too. It's funny, they have some of it that they have to deal with in this upcoming offseason, right, where they have to make a decision on D'Angelo Russell, and they have to, they have kind of forced themselves into a situation here where they can't lose D'Angelo Russell for nothing.
sounds brutal, man.
And dude, it's even worse when every time I point it out, I get called racist. But like, it's like but like, what like, it's funny though. On the other side of that coin, the Lakers actually, they won a championship, and then they stripped that team down way too fast, and that Danny Ainge, has actually spoken to this to a certain extent, where he's like, I was there in the 80s with the Celtics, and that group was kept together for just a season or two too long. And those last two seasons were just brutal for fans, and they were brutal for the players, because everybody knew that they weren't going anywhere. And I think here with the Clippers, they're probably already a season too long, right? And certainly heading into this next one, if you bring everybody back, which I'm told that I'm contractually obligated because of all of this talk of running it back.
Run it back! Run it back!
That I had to play that clip. Harrison, if you're watching, you're welcome. But like it, with the Clippers as they are right now, and even the Lakers right now, the Lakers, like LeBron and AD, I think are capable of winning almost any series on that, that they play, and if they are equipped at all with like a decent
Hmm.
cast. The problem is Rob Pelinka hasn't figured out a way to equip them with a decent supporting cast since they won the championship a few years back. And he keeps holding their feet to the fire, saying that they have to prove that the Lakers have to, they are worthy of further investment, and not kind of keeping an eye towards the future. Whereas like with the Clippers, that's the thing that I honestly most respect about the way that the Clippers operate. They don't let stuff walk for nothing. They keep those cap slots more available than the Lakers have, right? Where like the Lakers just let Caruso walk, and they let Malik Beasley walk, and they let Mo Bamba walk. Those are things that, at least before this new CBA kicked in, Ballmer just didn't have a problem with doing it, and now I think they're going to have to adjust with the second apron in this new CBA. But with the idea of just running it back with the Clippers, at least for me personally, if I was a Clippers fan, I don't know that I'd want to sign up for another season of that.
I don't think almost any fans. This is where you have to separate the fan from the objective decision, right? Like
Yeah,
most fans are like, we don't want to see Paul George play again for the Clippers. But if you just polled Clippers fans, over 50% would be like, we just want Paul George to leave. From like a fan perspective, from like a what do we want to see as fans, it would be, I don't want to watch this guy play another game for the Clippers.
Have Clippers fans started giving like 1-star reviews on iTunes to get him out of there?
To podcast P.
Right. Yeah,
your show is terrible. I should do that actually. Is really, you gave me a great
it's taking
idea.
down a competitor and everything. Yeah, it's right there.
I will take this and run with it. I will organize a campaign to flood 1-star reviews on Paul George's pod. It is crazy that he was podcasting. Yeah. But like most people understand that, like if you let him walk and you're still trying to win, with that being like the if you are still trying to contend with Kawhi Leonard, you objectively can't let him walk because you can't replace him, right? Like it opens up like if you bring back Harden at like a below max deal, it only opens up like the mini MLE. So like it gets them under the second apron, which is great. It might even get them under the first apron. I'm not sure. It'd be close. So like it gives them some avenues, but like you're replacing Paul George with like a $5 million a year player. Like what's that going to be? You know, that's like, I was going to say Gabe Vincent. I'm sorry. All
right, that'll do it for this episode of the.
So like you can't do it, but at the same time, like we've seen this for 5 years. It's been 5 years. It feels insane because I remember, you know, being at Summer League and just like the excitement, and everybody had it like across the NBA, except maybe Lakers fans were like, we can't wait to see this. Like this is so cool. Like these guys are coming together just for pure basketball terms, and you know they've won 3 series in 5 years, and they've won none in the past 3 years. And so it's like they're old. They're getting older. Like it seems crazy, but like when they first signed, Kawhi Leonard had just turned 28 when he signed with the Clippers.
Dang.
Yeah. It like he was like in his theoretical prime. Like he already had the injury issues, but like he was like in his late 20s. Paul George was 29. And like those guys are in their mid 30s now. Like the time, the clock is ticking. And it is interesting because what you said about teams, you know, knowing that they ran it back a year or two too long. The Clippers did this less than a decade ago with Lob City, where the last 2 years that they had those teams after 2015 and that Rocket series, that team was done. They were done. They had no hope. They had no spirit, etc. And they just kept running it back because it's like, we're not going to get a better player than Chris Paul. We're not going to get a better player than Blake Griffin. And, you know, they just kept doing it. And I think, you know, and you mentioned it as well, like the new stadium plays a part in this, right? Like they don't want to go in there with, you know, just Kawhi Leonard, who might only play, you know, 40 games or 60 games or whatever the case may be, and a bunch of nobodies. Like that does matter. The business side does matter. So it's all intertwined. If I had to get, I've been going back and forth on this. There's some days where I'm like, I think that they're just going to let PG walk. It really does depend on what Daryl Morey does, which is just horrible news for me and my
for everybody.
Honestly. Yeah, exactly. It's
like you don't want Daryl Morey to hold any cards or chips or anything like that.
Right. And so like that's kind of where we're at on Paul George. The rest of the team, it's like Harden, who knows? The thing with Harden is like who's going to pay James Harden? The answer is probably nobody. Like contending teams don't have the space to sign him, except for the Sixers, which would be absolutely hilarious. Would be the funniest thing in the world. It's not going to happen. And then outside of that, there's nobody. They're the only good team that has the space to just sign a big time free agent. And like, what is a tanking or a bad team going to do? Like the Spurs pairing him with Wemby would kind of be fascinating, but like you can't do that to Wemby. And like
I can't think of a less Spursy player than
oh yeah. So it's like theoretically on the court, the basketball fit, it's like you get a guy who can get Wemby super, but like it's not going to happen. And then it's like, what other teams are there? Russ technically counts, I guess. He's another guy who like obviously has a stance. I know you're very familiar, but I think your average Clippers fan is ready to pack his bags as well. It was just so bad in the playoffs this past year, and like he and PG are just like they just together is just a very. It's not actual bad vibes because like they generally get along, and like the team I think mostly has a good spirit, but like just the loser vibes is just with those two is just so powerful. And so some Clippers fans think like if we just get rid of those guys, even if the team is objectively worse, maybe like the overall just team, maybe something will actually positive will happen with those guys off the team. Maybe not. I think that they probably will end up bringing everybody back, and it's going to be terrible, and they're going to win 46 games again next year, and yeah, it's not a great time. It's not a great time.
Well, I also can see why Clippers fans in particular would be interested in a team getting worse subjectively, from a talent standpoint, taking a step back from a talent standpoint and succeeding off of vibes, because that's what happened with Patrick Beverley and with Lou Williams, right? Like you guys went through that, and then you brought in the talent, right? And this was the thing that I remember when the Paul George and Kawhi thing happened was, part of this was me being salty because the Lakers thought that they were getting Kawhi.
Yeah.
Like to this day, I have people who like to this day swear they thought that Kawhi was going to be a Laker, like swear that it was going to happen. So part of me was salty when I said it, but I also do think though that like this is the part of the Clippers that I think is their most consistent flaw is they do a lot of talent stacking without thinking about the way that the human beings are going to operate. It's how you would run a 2K team where you could turn off chemistry, and that's not how this necessarily works. And when they brought Kawhi and Paul George in, and you still had Patrick Beverley, and you still had, it was like essentially the most pervasive analysis that I remember from the time was this team just won whatever it was it like 47 games
48
or something, 48 games.
Yeah.
And you're adding Paul George and Kawhi to it. This team's going to, and I think that was when Patrick Beverley had the infamous, the next 5 years or hours or something like that. And it was like, yeah, but those guys, like how interested is Lue going to be in the lesser role than he plays on that group and those things. And I could kind of see why Clippers fans, and hell, I think all fan bases are kind of like this. The worst kind of team to root for is an entitled one. One that like that is the worst experience you could possibly have, is rooting for a star-studded entitled team that just keeps telling you at every turn, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. Stop worrying about us. Stop bugging us. Shut up. Just enjoy that you get to watch our superstar auras play in your arena or whatever. And if that team doesn't succeed, that's the type of team that fans just are the least interested in watching and want to see kind of broken down and built back up. The most fun experiences are the teams that have some talent, could maybe mess around and do something here and there. You don't have super high expectations, and they fly way above those expectations. And I can't blame Clippers fans or any fans really for going through a season like the Clippers had, or even like the Lakers just had. It's fortunate that Darvin Ham was such a disaster, because otherwise Lakers fans would probably feeling the same way about LeBron and AD.
It is the Darvin Ham conversations have been very wild over the past few days.
I had no idea there were so many Darvin Ham stands in the national media. I had no idea.
The media, I'll just say national media is like, I would say it's like very coach positive, but it does really depend on the coach. But like in general, they're just very slow to criticize. I mean, this is true of Ty Lue, and I mean, we probably should talk about Ty Lue on the Lakers theoretically, because I know
that was the last thing I wanted to. Yeah,
like everybody, like all Lakers fans I see are like, try to get Ty Lue out of there. It's like Ty Lue, like he is good. He is definitely good. He is an improvement over Darvin Ham, but like he, like every other coach outside of maybe Spo, and I'm sure Heat fans will complain about Spo, though I hate them and everything that they have and stand for. But like Ty Lue does things that drive us insane and are objectively bad decisions. Like you mentioned, starting PJ Tucker in Game 6 for like
reasons.
It's crazy. Like he also, and I know Lakers fans complained about this nonstop about Darvin Ham playing too many guards and playing small. Ty Lue does that all the time. Instead of small ball, we call it micro ball, because it's sometimes he has played lineups with 5 guards on the court where Paul George has been the biggest guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you expect your team to defend, rebound, anything. Like and at that point, you've completely lost the plot with like it's supposedly for like offensive versatility, but like there's nobody to set screens, there's nobody to get offensive rebounds, and it's just it drives you insane. So it's like Ty Lue is good, but this goes back to like my thing about like even if he is good, even if your next coach isn't even as good as Ty Lue, just getting like a different person, a different perspective, different ideas, a different voice in the locker room can be good. And he did a good job this year for the most part. 2021, he was great. And 2022, he was really good too. But like, it's just there's some things that if he were to leave, I would miss some of it. He is also very funny. I would be ready for a change. And I tweeted that and got a lot of pushback. Like I objectively get why they want to keep him, but like to me, it's probably time for some sort of a change. I mean, I also like, and I'm sure you've said this as well, like it also should extend to the front office. Like the Clippers front office has like been very similar for the past, 5, maybe 6 years, at least 5 years. And it's like outside of Michael Winger going to the Wizards last summer, and it's like they just need some fresh blood in there. They need new ideas, they need new ways of thinking about things and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not like putting it all on Ty Lue. And if anything, I think the front office deserves more of the blame than the coaching staff. But like if he comes to the Lakers, there will be a lot of celebrating, and there will be some really irritating decisions. Unless maybe he was a clutch merchant all along, which would actually be the funniest possible thing in the world. He stops playing small. It's like Anthony Davis and like 4 forwards and it's
Giants.
Like,
yeah.
Well,
that's how you knew Darvin Ham had no idea. Like, and I reported that this was the moment that he like lost the locker room was with that all wing lineup. But it was such a clear middle finger to fans. Like, okay, you want me to play big? Fine. I'll play big. Taurean Prince point guard, motherfuckers. Like, it's just like, what? Hold on. Like, we don't, not that big, but like, but yeah, it's funny, because this was a subject of conversation. Obviously, the whole reason that we're talking about this is because Ty Lue has 1 year remaining on his contract, and he is too good a coach to operate, as a lame duck, right?
Yeah.
So the Clippers have to make a decision on him, whether it's letting him walk or extending him. And obviously the Lakers have their opening now. And I know that so Jake Fisher came out and reported that he is not going to factor into their search. You've had The Athletic and Woj come out and say that he will. There was also the report. Oh man, now I'm forgetting who reported this, but the Clippers wouldn't allow him to interview with the Lakers potentially, and that would be
that was also The Athletic, I think. Yeah,
I think that was The Athletic. Yeah, and that would be interesting, and considering the guy, that would be pretty surprising. That's really rare that teams don't allow coaches to go out and interview in places. So we'll see how all of it plays out. But yeah, as all of this is going on, I got a text from Matt who was like, I'm not sure that you guys really, really want Lue. I'm not sure that he's the fix-all that fans seem to think he might be. The reason for me that I really believe in Lue is because I know he is going to get 100% buy-in from LeBron.
Yes.
And everything falls into place after that, right? And I don't think he's a perfect head coach. I do think there are some shortcomings there, but more so than any other head coach that the Lakers have had during the LeBron era, this is somebody who, as soon as he walks into the door, LeBron is going to, help carry out his voice throughout the locker room. And Lue can occasionally kind of get in LeBron's face and be like, hey man, you can point towards the corner, but that's your guard over. That's your mark over there. And that would be kind of a breath of fresh air there as well. So I think overall he, obviously he's a net positive over him, but I do think that you make a good point as it pertains to, is he the actual, perfect ingredient that takes the Lakers from first round exit to the promised land. I don't know if that's necessarily him.
I think, and this is where, fan brain, whatever, is like the margins are really small, right? Like we see this every year. Like if you get a slightly more favorable matchup in the first round or a slightly better coaching performance, like, and you get past this one matchup, like maybe you do go all the way to the finals. Like,
Yeah.
if you just think about the Bucks, like if Giannis is healthy, they probably beat the Pacers, they probably beat the Knicks. Could they beat the Celtics without Porzingis? Probably not, but like who knows? Like maybe.
Without Porzingis, yeah, I think they could without Porzingis,
Right.
for
And it's
sure.
like on now everybody's talking about them like what will do the Bucks do? Like the Bucks this, the Bucks. It's like if Giannis had just been healthy, like they would have like a somewhat realistic chance of making the NBA finals. And sometimes like having a coach that's somewhat better, maybe Ty Lue instead of Darvin Ham does get them over the Nuggets. I don't know. I think like with the Clippers, there are lots of other roster changes for the Lakers that need to be made. And a lot of them are the same roster issues, which is getting like younger, getting more athletic, actually playing your young guys when you do have them. But Ty Lue is certainly not the best at doing that particular thing. But I think he would be an upgrade. And I think your point about LeBron is huge, right? Like, because that is the main thing. If you're going to keep LeBron and build around him, which it seems like is going to happen, Ty Lue would be kind of the main guy. But yeah, like it's like it was always a blend of things, and like he and the Clippers front office have also had at times a rocky relationship where he has wanted things and they have wanted different things, and those things have clashed. And that has led to, in particular, last year, where there were like moves that like he did not agree with, or things that he wanted that did not happen, and it probably led to a worse performance. Like these people are human, and all this stuff interacts. So I do think that like if he's available, the Lakers should sign him. I think for the Clippers specifically, it is so tough because it does depend again on what they do. Like if he walks and like these other guys walk, maybe you do pivot to a younger coach. And to me, when you look at guys who are now considered like the rising crop of NBA head coaches, it's a bunch of young guys who have not coached before, like Mark Daigneault in OKC, Jamal Mosley. Even though I don't think he was great against the Cavs, like has earned nothing but praise, done a tremendous job in Orlando. Chris Finch, even though he's a little older, still a first-time head coach in Minnesota. And then you look at all these teams hiring retreads and over, and it's like, Doc Rivers, like I get Ty Lue is not Doc Rivers in many, many ways, but like, I sometimes I think that there is untapped stuff there, and sometimes it does not work out. Like we'll remember the Mark Daigneaults, and we don't remember the Nate Bjorkgrens or whatever of the world, unless you're a Pacers fan, maybe. But like I think specifically for the Lakers, if he's available and he wants to go there, I think it would be the best guy probably. To your point about the Clippers not letting him interview, we will see if push comes to shove. I would be very, very, very interested to see what happens if Ty Lue says, I do want to leave, and the Clippers are like, no, but they can't agree to an extension. Will they actually block him from interviewing? I think it would be a really, really bad look. It would not do them well with the coaches association, who are a very tight-knit group. Players probably wouldn't care, but like, I don't know if they would do it.
He's a former player though. So like, like that, I think that to a certain extent, like, because you do have like JJ Redick has like the most cush job in media right now.
I have no idea why he'd want to be a coach. It's insane.
I have no, I mean, it's because these people are the most competitive human beings on planet Earth. But yeah, like if I'm a current player with interests on coaching at some point, I would also be kind of, so the Clippers are going to do Lue dirty like that. Like, okay. All right. You kind of keep that in mind. So, but look, this is the other funny thing though. I always I joke about the Clippers being like the tech bro organization. Normally, like you have so much cycle. Like my dad was an electric engineer, and he would say that like famously with like Steve Jobs at Apple, he would walk into a room and you would have people like hide under their desks because they were terrified he was going to fire them, and that's just like how that world operates. And it's super interesting to me that you would see a Clippers organization become as stagnant as they have. But I think this is good. I do think there's a really good chance that this kind of extends into the off season. And I think this is something that you and I are probably going to come back to and talk about quite a bit, whether it's in DMs or in pod form or whatever. I also have to keep bugging you because you are a Michigan fan and my Vikings just drafted JJ. I need a scouting report there. But but before we get you out of here, is there anything that you want to plug? Anything? Where can we find your work? Because it is great work that you do. I love the way that you cover the Clippers.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And 213 Hoops, which is I'm pretty sure 213hoops.com is my writing, which is going to be a bit dormant until we start doing our own exit interviews, which is funny because the Clippers don't actually allow media to do them. But we just do little basically season ending write-ups. So I'll be probably doing the bulk of those. And then the podcast is the Lob the Jam, the podcast we did. If you really want to hear Clippers fans be miserable, just listen to our most recent pod, which was an hour and a half long and was just full of hatred towards Paul George in particular and Russell Westbrook. And if you want to hear some Russell Westbrook bashing, then hop on over. I don't have a bookmark for you, but it'll be there. That's about it. Nothing in particular. I'm not working on any stories. I'm just watching and hoping that the forces of good, i.e. the Oklahoma City Thunder, can take out the forces of evil, the Dallas Mavericks.
The forces of evil right now are getting their asses kicked by the Minnesota Timberwolves, 46-28 midway through the second quarter. Wow. Without Gobert. I would not have predicted this.
The Nuggets have been more vulnerable all year. Like the bench thing is shaky and
yeah.
But it comes down to the margins and being so thin. But that would be crazy. I'm not a huge fan of the Wolves. I mean, I feel bad for their fans. But I mean, Wolves, if it's Wolves Thunder, that would be two of the youngest teams. I guess the Wolves aren't. They have Conley, who's so old, and Gobert, but too young.
He's the GPA riser, right?
Yeah,
he's the age riser.
Yeah, but no, I'm excited to watch the playoffs. And honestly, and I don't know. Sometimes after really bad Lakers seasons, you probably feel this. It almost feels better to watch them without a rooting bias and without having to be miserable watching your team lose in embarrassing fashion or frustrating fashion, whatever the case may be. So I'm honestly more excited for the playoffs now that I don't have to the dread and especially hear the Luka conversations every 30 seconds. But that's really it for me.
Well, I appreciate it. I have to, there's some super comments here that I have to get to. So if you want to hang out for those, you're more than welcome to, or you can peace out as well. As usual, I'm going to play this right at the top for all of them and let it take care of all of them rather than play this audio for each of them. All right. The first one here comes from Matthew. What if Daryl Morey uses cap space to sign Mozgov and Deng to max contracts? Somehow don't think that would happen. He would cease to be Daryl Morey, but you said it earlier, Robert, like him with the amount of control over the offseason that he could have this year is legitimately terrifying. And there are so many teams, I saw the stat that of all of the top spenders in the league, I think 3 of the 5 of them aren't currently in the playoffs, whether it was the Clippers, the Warriors, and I think the Lakers are in that kind of, they're either there or it's Suns. Thank you. Yeah. The Lakers also, they aren't in the second apron realm, but they're certainly above the luxury tax. So it's going to be interesting, man. These owners don't like spending money on losers, and that tends to be, kind of the impetus for change. And Daryl Morey is always going to go star hunting. He's always going to target the top free agents on the market. And I don't think it's a great crop of free agents. So therefore, Paul George, come on down, I guess.
Yeah. And I did want to stick around just in case there were any super chats that I might be able to answer or were directed at me. Maybe not. I don't know. But I will stick around for a little bit. But because it's not just the cap space. What makes the Sixers so frightening, and I'm sure in classic Sixers fashion, they will screw it up somehow, is that they have that and they still have all those picks. A couple of them aren't great, but one of the Clippers picks they have is very good. Their own is very good. They could have space for a Paul George and be able to trade for an Alex Caruso or whatever. And all of a sudden that team is very good. But I don't think Mozgov and Deng, maybe a Tom Thibodeau team Luol Deng getting called up in the middle of the playoffs. Got to suit up. Josh Hart like stubs his toe, and all of a sudden Luol Deng is playing 30 minutes the next game. Uh,
He still has needles left in him from the old Chicago days. And somehow I don't know if he's available.
yeah.
Marley Villasenor writes, just finished winning time. What are your quick thoughts and favorite moments? Seeing Adrian Brody go full Pat Riley with the slick back hair and alpha dog, the locker room gave me chills. I really liked the first season. I was not a big fan of the second. It became really clear in the second one that the Lakers stepped in and were like, hey, if you're going to do this, if you're going to use Lakers and all of that stuff, we want a certain type of appeal and a certain type of image here. And I thought that made it a worse show. Like that whole who's the producer, the guy who does it. He also did The Big Short, and he also did Succession. I'm blanking on his name, but that guy's content, it's at its best when he is lampooning the rich, not kissing up to them. And I thought in the second season he was kissing up to them. Let's go. Justin Tyndall writing, a flop decides a playoff game. Glad the flop rule is working so well. Apparently flop techs only get called against the Lakers. The players union really gets in the way of this, but like they need to stop getting in the way of the whole, like players should be ridiculed publicly for the flop. That's how you end it, right? Like, like you just had a series against Luka, and he's like, and you have Harden on your team. And I watched Joel Embiid. Like, it makes me hate those players because they're too talented to flop as much as they do.
I think the opposing team should be able to use the Game of Thrones shame chant, like either when they're walking to the arena or be able to like blast it during like timeouts. So that would make Steve Kerr very upset. So we can't have that either.
You can't piss off Steve Kerr.
Yeah.
Let's go. We have one more here. BG the Kid. Anthony, do your sources say Lue is a realistic target? It's like we've said, man, it just all comes down to the Clippers. I think I know that the Lakers are very interested in Lue if he becomes available. But like one thing I could totally see happening here, because Ballmer has FU money and it doesn't affect the cap. Maybe he just pays Lue to be a consultant to the front office, gives them the bag there, and tells them to go away there. I don't think Lue is so desperate to coach that he would turn down a giant wad of cash to consult the front office just so that, Ballmer doesn't have to watch him, walk across the hallway. Could you see that happening?
I could. I mean, Ty Lue is also not that old for a coach. I mean, he's not super young, but like he could stand to wait. I mean, if he wants to coach LeBron again, that's more of a time sensitive situation, obviously. Mm-hmm. I think if push really came to shove and like they couldn't agree to an extension, and Ty Lue's like, if you don't extend me, like I want to get my options open, and the Lakers are right there. I do think that the Clippers would let him interview, and he probably would end up getting the job if that were the case.
Yeah.
But like, I do think, as you said, like whether it's to be a consultant or whether it's just a lucrative extension, even if it's just for like 2 years or something, they just pay him like, again, like an absurd average annual value of like 20 million or whatever. And just be like, even if it's just until the end of the Kawhi PG or like another 2 years, like here's, $50 million. So you don't go to the Lakers and just finish out with us, and then we'll let you go. I could also see that happening. There were rumors of a 5-year extension. I don't think that's going to happen because this team is probably going to be extremely bad in 5 years, and I don't think Ty Lue is going to want to stick around for that.
Well, I don't think it matters whether he wants to stick around for it. He wants to get paid for those years while he wouldn't have to stick around for it. Like that was what was funny about. I had somebody point this out to me in my mentions today that had the Lakers just hired Lue, they wouldn't have had to pay for Frank Vogel's dead money. They wouldn't have had to pay now for Darvin Ham's dead money. And Ty Lue would be on his second contract now, with LeBron heading towards his third, when the whole reason that they didn't want to pay Ty Lue beyond LeBron's seasons was they wanted to link the two, the coach and the player together, which made some sense, but didn't show a ton of faith in either entity. And if you don't have a ton of faith on the front end of it, it doesn't set you up very well for the back end of that relationship. But yeah,
Yeah.
that one hurts. When I saw that there and I started doing the math on, even if they overpaid Ty, they probably would have come out ahead by just hiring him in the first place.
Yeah.
Financially.
And I mean, that's the other thing. I guess it's the other advantage. And I don't want to give the owners anything here because, this is entirely just their money. But like rookie head coaches are cheaper than
Yeah.
these guys who've been around for a while. But yeah, Ty Lue is not going to be cheap.
No.
It would be actually the funniest outcome is he leaves the Clippers, but the Lakers don't want to pony up for him and he goes somewhere else. That would actually be the funniest. I don't think it would happen, but it's like, I can't, like the Pistons pay him like $50 million a year to replace Monty Williams.
They have $100 million in coaching salaries.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Tom Gores does not have that kind of money, but that would actually be the funniest.
Well, this has been a blast. I greatly appreciate it. It's always whether it's in summer league when we meet up there or whatever. I always enjoy talking basketball with you, and I do hope that those of you watching right now do go check out 213 Hoops to go see Robert's writing and his coverage of this team. It's going to be a fascinating offseason. I know you're gonna kill it with your coverage of it. So thanks for hopping on, man, and best of luck this summer.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. That is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge. Please do hit subscribe for those of you who are watching live. If you guys are watching live on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. If you guys are listening to this in the morning via podcast, hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts, preferably on Odyssey. And until tomorrow, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you mañana. Blanked out there.